HAL 9000. That's the dread-inducing artificial intelligence from Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey. I can't do that, Dave. Turns out Kubrick might not have been far off, at least when it comes to AI. By the way, there's a lot of great, more recent examples of artificial intelligence I could discuss. But we're talking, of course, about ChatGPT parent company OpenAI, when testing its latest and greatest model, gave an explicit order to shut down. The model pulled the same move as HAL. It defied the order.
Wow, that report has tech experts raising alarm bells. Joining us now to unpack and demystify the latest in artificial intelligence is the former White House Information Officer and CEO of the cybersecurity firm Fortalice Solutions, Theresa Payton. Theresa, good morning. How you doing? So I want to talk to you.
Good.
Should we be worried about the direction that AI is going in? Break this down for us, because we've all seen the movies about doomsday. And so as exciting as it is to have somebody helping us with all of our work, how worried should we be?
Yeah, I'd like to break this down as sort of the good, the bad, the ugly. So the good news is what you just relayed happened in a lab. The bad news is we're already using these products, whether we want to or not, in our everyday lives. And we don't build cars without brakes, and we don't allow autopilot on commercial airplanes to ignore the pilot and co-pilot. So why would we let AI ignore a shutdown? So that's the bad. And the ugly is this really underscores the challenges we have of making sure that there's always a human in the loop when it comes to technology, especially AI.
You know, it's interesting. I am about as far from like a tech doom person as you can possibly be. I'm for new technology. I think a lot of concerns that get raised about new technology historically have proven to be short-sighted. The kinds of concerns we hear about every new form of communication ends up looking in retrospect a little silly and a little paranoid. And even with some of the, putting in fail-safes, I think that makes sense. Obviously, that can have a lot of merit. Although we could quickly get to a place where if a human was going to override what a car was doing or what a plane was doing, would we worry that they would be introducing human error? I expect we'll get very rapidly to a point where the self-driving car, the self-flying plane, or whatever it is less prone to error than human beings. So is it some kind of check where they don't want to be told to do something that would actually crash the thing?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a tough one. And this is where safety and engineering experts are going to be so helpful. And we really do have to focus on the human user story. And so where could the human make error? Where could computer-assisted technology make suggestions to the human? And then, where do you allow sort of the computer to work and the human to work? Really, technology is supposed to be here to serve us, to help us with safety, to help us with security, to streamline things in our lives. And so we always need to be thinking about, where do we have the human in the loop? What are the overrides? What are the fail safes? And what kind of safety nets do we need to have in place? And it feels like with some of the technology, there's such a rush to be first to market or soon to market. It feels like we're skipping over some of these important steps of safety, security, privacy, and sort of thinking about that human user story.
So where are we in the world of AI? I know there's some people who don't understand it at all, some people who just use like ChatGPT, and then there are people who are deep in the weeds, like having robots like Kim Kardashian. So can you explain kind of where we are for the people that are far advanced and how much access we actually have at the current moment?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And, thankfully, between my clients and I get on the road a lot giving speeches, and it really is a mixture of what you just said. You have people who are using generative AI algorithms in sort of their everyday personal and work lives. And then you have some people who are saying, well, I'm just going to sit on the sidelines and see how it all shakes out. And then you have people in the middle. What I would say is we are reaching sort of this critical point where we do need to have more substantive conversations around not just AI, but other technologies that are going to follow it. This isn't sort of the last technology innovation we're going to have. And really, I think what I've been calling for several years is in the United States, we need an individual privacy bill of rights. So no matter what technology is hot, no matter what's not, we always still sort of our individual privacy bill of rights as it relates to digital data, data collection, data tracking, data tools that we happen to use tools that are used to help us, tools that are used to track us. And if we had that, then we would have the right guardrails in place for this technology and what comes behind it.
One of the applications of AI that is becoming, I think, most immediately important and problematic is the potential for students of all ages to cheat in terms of writing papers, anything they can do at home by having ChatGPT or whatever the system is, write it for them, write things that are of passable quality. Sometimes you can spot mistakes on them, but how it depends how aggressively these things are even read and graded when if you're in some kind of large lecture hall at the college level. Maybe they only get a cursory look anyway. To my mind, I don't think this is going to be an unsolvable problem. It just means teachers got to do more in-class essays and speeches and those sorts of things, not the kinds of things you could cheat on by taking home. But how are classrooms reckoning with the reality of this technology?
Yeah, this is very interesting, and I do get the opportunity to speak with students all around the world, and I stay very close to my alma maters, University of Virginia and Immaculata University, and talking to the students and faculty. And what's interesting is the students have a very pragmatic view of this technology, and so some people may call it cheating, but really what it calls for is we need to focus our curriculum, and this is K through 12 as well as university, on critical thinking skills. Rote thinking, memorization is definitely helpful, but critical thinking is going to be key. And really, generative AI is not going to replace critical thinking. So it can mimic critical thinking, but it's not going to create like the next big idea, the next big innovation. It needs human inputs. And so I think there's a lot that needs to happen in the classrooms K through 12 and the university setting around what are the most important things to learn from a critical thinking perspective, what are the right things to memorize, and then where do you leverage technology in a very pragmatic way to assist with the learning process.
What is currently being done with all the data that's being collected from Americans, and how can we protect political leaders or the wrong companies or anyone from getting access to what I know has to be an intense amount of information on Americans and around the world?
I have a lot of questions about sort of the aggregation of information, especially for US citizens. The one thing you could see where it could be incredibly helpful is having data streamlined and cleaned up and easily accessible to the departments and agencies could make the government work better on our behalf. But if we're also collecting information and we're not truly curating it, a lot of people think that all of these massive databases are like carefully curated Japanese koi ponds with beautiful bonsais, and they're not. They're mostly like junkyards of data. They don't look anything like a beautiful koi pond and bonsai. And so if we're just aggregating all this junky data and putting it in databases, and now we're going to use it to make decisions, I have a lot of concerns about that. So I would love to see us streamline our data operations for the US government, for the employees of the US government, and to make things work better for US citizens. But at the same time, I have some concerns. If we aggregate that data and store it all in the same place, and we don't put the right security and privacy safeguards on it, we already know that all of our credit card data, our social security numbers, all of those have been hacked in different places over the years and are in bad people's hands. So if we start to aggregate this data on US citizens, it just makes it a huge target for nation state operatives, cyber criminal syndicates to try and get after that data. So we have to be very careful how we build the architecture and making sure that really anything sensitive, unique to us, behavioral based analytics about each citizen is protected, safeguarded, encrypted, and stored in such a way that we assume it might get hacked. And if it does get hacked, that it's virtually unusable.
When people have, I think, the wrong impression sometimes about what it means to have their data out there or their data in the possession of foreign actors or hostile actors, if the data is, you're right, credit card information, social security information, that we need to protect, encrypt, design cybersecurity policies around. Sometimes, but also with use of social media, like the concern about TikTok and other things has been based on basically preferences or a profile that the social media system creates about you, which you're just contributing to when you sign up for the thing, when you click around on it, and then people get very annoyed that that data is out there when it's really just part and parcel for using the service at all. There's a kind of, I think, naive expectation of privacy to some degree as we engage with social media and AI that will be very different from, yes, necessarily establishing protection around financial information and that kind of thing.
No, you're right. I mean, if you think about it, sometimes Silicon Valley, big tech, social media platforms, they give you sort of this air of, well, you can set your account to private and you can opt into all these privacy settings. You even recall like some browsers would say like we have an incognito mode or an invisible mode. And all of those things give a false sense of, okay, I've got a terms and service agreement with this platform and I've got a private account, privacy settings. I feel like I've done everything I need to do. And I just want to share photos with my grandmom or share my travels with my friends. And you don't realize like once it's on the internet never forgets and delete is never really delete. And so that is the thing, is this information is being collected about us. And because we don't have an individual privacy bill of rights as it relates to our digital age, we don't get to opt in and see what's being collected about us, ask for it to be deleted, ask for it not to be shared. And oh, by the way, social media platform, if you're making money off of me, maybe I want in on that action too. So if you're making 5 cents on every click I'm making because of ads, maybe I want 2 cents of that. But we don't have those guardrails and we don't have those rights explicitly spelled out for us. And it's really past time.
I have monetization turned on for X, and I get a little check every 2 weeks or so based on how well my tweets do that I really appreciate. So I think that could be the wave of the future. Theresa, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, and be safe out there.
I feel like people are Yoko-ing the wife. Maybe she deserves it. But Yoko didn't break up the Beatles.
Yes, I think it was Jill Biden. I also think it's Hunter Biden. I also think President Biden has some agency here, too. We're not saying it was Weekend at Bernie's. He was aware what was going on. No, I'm saying he wasn't. Like, he had moments where he was non-functioning, but he understood what was going on.
The finger pointing continues. Bill Maher speaking there with Jake Tapper and Massachusetts Congressman Seth Moulton on his show, speaking about former President Biden's cognitive decline in the latter half of his presidency. It's what Maher said next that stunned the two guests to silence. Take a listen.
A lot of it is that the Democrats they were too romanticized about the fact that he had a lot of tragedy in his life. You know, and he survived a lot of it. So every time something bad would happen, they were like, oh, he's so resilient. When they should have said, this dude is bad luck. No?
I don't know. Maher referencing the tragic car accident that took the lives of President Biden's first wife and child back in 1972, and his oldest son, Beau, who died from cancer in 2015.
I don't think what Maher said there was like offensive or something. It was just kind of a.
He said he's bad luck for having.
Land.
Yeah, to me, you have to be human first. So
okay,
you
Maher's
don't
a
have
comedian.
to.
He makes fun of a lot of people. He makes fun of Trump all the time.
You don't have to lack empathy. You can ask tough questions. You can be a comedian, but there's a difference between political toughness and personal coldness. I think it's just tone deaf. A lot of people are looking at all the different things that Biden has been through, and his story was one of a comeback kid. Mm-hmm. It was one of resilience that actually powered his ambition. Part of his whole story that he's writing is that he gets knocked down and gets back up again through political knockdowns and actual personal knockdowns. And I think that's a real story to tell. Like, people write their autobiographies all the time. Joe Biden has a real story to share that people followed along with. So again, blaming the American public for following along and believing that he could do it again is not a bad thing. It's just that his team.
I don't blame the American people for believing it. No,
blaming Democrats.
It was hidden from them.
Blaming Democrats who believe what his team and now we know his wife were saying is not a bad thing, because this is a man who got back up after major tragedy and major political loss in the past. So I don't think that it's off the table that people genuinely believe that he could do it again.
Yeah, but when you believe that about yourself, it just can lead you to all sorts of incorrect conclusions. I mean, again, this is not fundamentally different from, and Jake Tapper says this in the book several times, from the difficult decisions we all eventually have to have with parents and grandparents that grandpa, grandma, we're gonna not renew the driver's license when it expires next year. You shouldn't be driving anymore.
Yes.
We're gonna make decisions about where you live and who's helping you. These things you can't do anymore. This is just very basic stuff. So even if you have a hero narrative about yourself, as many of our grandparents or great grandparents had that narrative about, it's the greatest generation saving us from in World War II, doing truly heroic, wonderful things. Our elderly generations and relatives and people have accomplished wonderful things and have overcome tragedies that we in our more comfortable and affluent post-World War II era haven't had to deal with as much, although last couple of years COVID was pretty awful
rough,
for a lot of people, including for that same class of elderly Americans who overcame so much decades ago. So it's not about disrespect or not saying they can't do it, but just being honest with people about what their
But honest
abilities
and empathetic are they can
they're
go
not-
hand in
yeah,
hand,
they do.
right? So, and I said this before, there's an elephant in the room. Biden should have stepped aside and cleared the way for a younger, fresher voice. He would have
Which
been
he said
hailed.
he was gonna do.
But wait, he would have been hailed as a hero because his party would have known that he was in the process for 4 years of not only running a presidency, but growing his own party and the next leaders and setting Democrats up for success built under his time in office. I think that being mean-spirited is totally different, and attacking his strategy that didn't work. It's a strategy that didn't work, and he's not president. So we're having conversations about what if, but he's actually just not. And so piling on in this moment just feels mean-spirited as opposed to relevant or helpful in any way. Because yes, we understand that his wife was doing what a wife might do, protecting her husband to the best of her ability and believing that he could still push through this. Probably not accepting herself that he was in a bit of a cognitive decline, which is also a hard thing that a grandma, if using that reference, might have to
living
do
in the
for
White
a
House.
grandpa. But that's just literally where we were. And so now we're here under President Trump. But the easy thing for people to constantly do is just throw darts at Biden. And it's like, oh my gosh, the man is like really just trying to live his life not in office anymore.
The motivations
He
of
didn't
the
win.
family seemed not necessarily admirable and mixed at best to me. In particular, I mean, Hunter more so than Jill. And it seems very clear that Hunter and Jill were exerting a lot of influence over Biden.
For sure.
Hunter has a lot of personal reasons to want Joe Biden to remain the president, to hold out for a pardon. I mean, maybe if you really thought about it, his best case of his most likely chance of getting a pardon was Joe Biden not getting reelected or not being the president anymore and getting a pardon right at the last minute, which is exactly what happened. But I think he felt that he was better covered for his liabilities with, obviously, with Biden actually being in control of the Justice Department. They were frustrated. This comes across really clearly in the book. They hate Merrick Garland. Joe Biden and Hunter Biden hate Merrick Garland, the Attorney General.
But why? Obama appointed him.
They hate him because he continued he allowed these investigations into Hunter Biden that had been initiated by Republicans to go on. Very similar situation to how Jeff Sessions, who was picked to be Trump's Attorney General, Trump picked him assuming he would kill these inquiries into Russiagate and other things, and then he didn't, and eventually Trump made him resign.
And I think both of those
thing.
people are in positions where they're doing what's best for the country, and they think the country wants to inquire about.
Right,
as
and
opposed
Biden
to
didn't like that.
Political affiliation. Neither did Trump.
Yeah.
And just like Biden's kids try to benefit from his time in office, so do Trump's. They're literally opening a Qatari hotel while Trump is being nice and cozying up with the Middle East. Like, these are things that are happening that we're all, politics gets blurred when you have businesses and other things going on. So we can talk about this endlessly on both sides of the aisle, but I do think that that's not something that we should look at as a bad thing because someone's kid is trying to figure out how to benefit from their father's position when that happens every day in our life. If we're just honest about it. I don't think that that's a reason why we should say the entire Democratic Party needs to be thrown away because the son and wife protected Joe Biden and he made his own decisions, as Jake Tapper mentioned. Like, it's not like he was just floating through this thing. He wasn't a clone. He was a human that went in and out of full consciousness, probably.
The entire Democratic Party needs to be thrown away.
No.
It does.
I knew you were going to take that line.
It does. Oh, it does. Oh.
No, it does not. It just needs a readjustment, and I think that they missed a huge moment under Biden to readjust, and now they're having a second moment that they're going to miss if they don't come up with a real plan. Every time we talk about it, we're talking about throwing money into creating a Joe Rogan. That's not a plan. It's not a plan that didn't happen overnight. This is just somebody with an authentic opinion that changed and sways, and we allow them the space to do it because they're a trusted podcasting voice for many people. So they need a different strategy, hold a different meeting, and use those millions in a different way. And so that's what I would tell them.
I agree with you on that.
Embrace life as a political independent. That particular kernel of advice coming from an unlikely source, former Biden White House press secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, who at just 4.5 months out of the White House seems to be distancing herself from her former boss. And now she's announcing that she has switched her political affiliation to independent. That announcement comes Wednesday alongside a promotion for her new tell-all book titled Independent, a look inside a broken White House outside the party lines.
Chronicles the 3 weeks leading to President Biden's decision to drop out of the race and the alleged party betrayal that led to his decision. Here she was back in February speaking about that alleged betrayal.
There was a disconnect for me, what was happening with leadership in the Democratic Party and how it was truly, as my former colleague, communications director Ben LeBolt said, it was a firing squad, and I had never seen anything like it before.
In a promotional release, the book's publisher said that KJP, quote, didn't come to her decision to be an independent lightly. She is also quoted as saying, the danger we face as a country requires freeing ourselves of boxes. We need to be willing to exercise the ability to think creatively and plan strategically. We need to be clear-eyed and questioning rather than blindly loyal and obedient as we may have been in the past.
You're reading her quote in a Trump voice?
Was that a Trump voice?
Some on the left, though, seeing it as something of a betrayal by the former senior staffer. Journalist and author of the newsletter Public Notice, Aaron Rupar, responding to the news of the book on Wednesday, posting on X, quote, it's sad that Biden stuck with Karine Jean-Pierre for all those years, despite the fact that she was not great at her job, only for her to turn around and write a book about why she left the Democratic Party and is now an independent.
Meanwhile, Scott Jennings on CNN Wednesday echoed what many conservatives are saying, and I bet I'm going to agree with it. Take this book with a grain of salt. Listen.
I mean, I think the things we've learned in the last 2 years is that the two least credible sources of information in this world are the Gaza Health Ministry and Karine Jean-Pierre. And when she puts this book out, every single person who reads it, reviews it, or discusses it needs to remember that virtually everything she said about what was going on behind the scenes in the White House was an outright lie. And so when she puts a book out, I think we ought to treat it from a source that has a proven track record of lying from the podium of the White House to the American people.
Yes, that is correct. I think Karine Jean-Pierre is, well, I don't like her, and I don't think anybody else does at this point.
I do.
You like her?
Yeah.
Oh, well, let me
I'll
do
be the
my
one.
whole invective. No, I think she was not very good at her job. That's not just my opinion, right? That's the opinion of Democrats now. I love people becoming independents. I'm an independent. That's wonderful. This is not a true conversion to independence. This is an opportunistic move. She wants to disassociate herself to some degree with the administration that everyone hates, and that she is one of the leading figures involved in manufacturing, protecting, defending the cover-up. I don't think she was ever very good on the podium, but it goes well beyond that. She has no credibility. That's not just coming from me. Alex Thompson of the Original Sin book has some new reporting out that I was following last night and this morning. This is on X. He writes that her colleagues, KJP's colleagues, call her one of the most ineffectual and unprepared people I've ever worked with. The amount of time spent coddling her was astronomical compared to our attention on actual matters of substance. Many have quietly fumed for years. Again, I'm not reading from some conservative person. This is Alex Thompson. Jean-Pierre had caused internal drama. She was untouchable because of her close relationship with Anthony Bernal, who's the Jill Biden figure who is very reviled in the Original Sin book. All right, go ahead now.
The job of a press secretary is to provide press with information that is discussed amongst, well, like Carolyn Levitt, you know, they just does the same thing. She says what's best for Trump, always. And then if it changes, she says that it changed because their team told her that it changed. That's the job of a press secretary. Now, I'm going to say first saw the headline, saw the news come up on the TV, and I'm like, oh man, this is another money grab, another book.
It is. That's exactly
That's what I thought. But then I went back and watched her
thinking was
interview on The View. in March of this year. And she actually said a lot of things that are in line with her new decision. And so she said, I want to look at the Republican Party and ask you, are you comfortable with a government that skips over Congress constantly? And a president that does that and going to have blind allegiance and not make the proper changes to put the country first? And then I want to ask Democrats, who are you? Who are we fighting for? And are we meeting this moment that we complained about of Trump with a sense of urgency? And if the answer to both questions is not satisfactory, then you have not found yourself in either of the parties. And I think that there's a strong argument that most Americans do not lie on the fringes of the parties. So I don't think that most Americans are very far left, and I don't think that they are very far right. I think most Americans are center left or center right, and they want to hear real conversations. Polls showed us that most Americans do not think that some of Trump's, what people would describe as childish behaviors, are acceptable, but they didn't think that the option and the alternative was acceptable either, and the way that it was coordinated and pushed forward in that way. And so I think that the American people feel a lot like KJP because they really want to find themselves in the truth and honesty of who represents them. And just like we saw the number of independents in this country rise, I think there's a strong argument for the fact that people are looking somewhere else and not in a two-party system to figure out what's next. And she didn't say she's running for president. She just said, I am an autonomous individual that wants to make my own choices. And I think we should commend that. I actually changed my perspective, and I think that we should commend anybody who allows autonomy of thought.
If Caroline Leavitt knew that Trump had suffered some kind of cognitive catastrophe and was no longer capable or qualified to be the president and didn't tell us, I would be condemning her.
I don't think
I would not want her to write a book. I would not want her to be in public life anymore. The same goes for KJP.
I don't think that she believes that Biden was cognitively in decline. She doesn't believe that. The book is an angry book about how people treated him. She doesn't believe that. So she's being loyal and honest. No, she's just telling you her perspective. That's what she feels. Just like you don't feel that Trump is a little senile.
I don't want to hear anything
you don't think
from her
she doesn't
ever
think
again.
that Biden has a cognitive decline, and that's her right to think or not to think. She worked closely with him.
She should write a book then about how Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy are real. Sorry, kids, if any of them are watching, but she's gonna come in for a lot more of a vicious criticism on social media, I think. Beyond evil. Those are the words conservatives are using to blast Michelle Obama's recent comments on women giving birth. The former First Lady made the comments on her podcast, IMO, and has the MAGA world erupting with rage. Let's watch.
Women's reproductive health is about our life. It's about this whole complicated reproductive system that does, the least of what it does is produce life.
Obama was discussing how disconnected male lawmakers and religious leaders are from women's experiences producing life. And she had some unlikely people coming to her defense on social media. Heritage Foundation Reproductive Technology Associate Emma Waters says, quote, "For too long, we've debated sex versus abstinence-only education while neglecting to teach women how their own bodies work. Generations grow up not knowing how to chart cycles, track ovulation, or understand their natural fertility. We must do better for women and men's holistic health."
Others slammed Obama. MAGA commentator Vince Langman said, "This monster is beyond evil." And author Danielle D'Souza Gill writes, "Motherhood is the most beautiful, powerful gift God gave women. Creating life isn't some side effect, it's a miracle. Don't let the left cheapen it." Go ahead.
Well, let me be clear. I'm a mom.
Yeah.
And so giving birth was one of the most transformative experiences of my life, right? It changed me in all the best ways. I wouldn't personally say that it was the least important of all my reproductive things. So I understand why people are upset there. But I don't want to miss the bigger message of what Michelle Obama was actually saying. She's simply asking us to broaden the conversation around women's reproductive health and make sure that it's not only male and religious leaders in the room having the conversation. She's saying that women are more than baby-making machines and that we have a lot more to us to reproductive health that's been neglected for so long. She's saying that if we don't protect women before the pregnancy, through the pregnancy, and after the pregnancy, then we're going to have issues endlessly. Everyone's going to suffer in our world. And she's also probably looking at Republicans and saying, you know, you're fighting to incentivize women to keep babies, to pay women to have more babies. This is what we heard Trump float past recently. And that's great, but you have to support them through the whole process and really understand that you cannot cut family paid leave. You cannot cut access to Medicaid and WIC. You cannot cut affordable child care. These are all things that Republicans simultaneously simultaneously have on the chopping block, but then also want to say have more babies. We'll support you through the actual pregnancy, and that's it. And she's saying we have so much more than that, so much more to our reproductive system. So I believe that the point might have got lost in like picking apart one or two words. And while I said, yeah, I don't think that it's the least important thing, that's up to you to determine. I don't think that women that can't have children or choose not to have children are any less of women with important reproductive systems. And that's what I think Michelle Obama was getting at.
Yeah, I believe choice is the essence of liberty, about what you do and how you live your life. So I think, though, that the right perceives liberals, cultural liberals, social liberals, as having downplayed the importance, the significance of having children, and motherhood and parenthood being not the only or not the most important for everyone, but a very valid option for a lot of women, that a lot of women will be most happy in that role. That's not everyone. Everyone is different. Mm-hmm. Different things make different people happy, and it's honestly none of my business. Doesn't matter to me what makes you or you happy. But the standpoint of conservatives is that liberals have downplayed that, not saying that it's not about saying they're all equal choices, but saying being a working woman or a career woman or driven by other things is more important than being a mother. That is the perception among conservatives. I don't know if that's always fair, but when Michelle Obama says things like it plays into that perception.
And I think the perception from the other side for Democrats is that, reproductive health is about more than just pregnancy. And really, we lack education in that area across the board. So, we don't talk about fertility as much or menstrual health. We always talk about having babies. And the conservatives always say that we're not emphasizing that enough. But like you said, where's the rest of the conversation around menopause care or around actual, ovulation, all the different things that women should know more about? I think we also need to talk about the fact that the U.S. has some of the highest maternal mortality rates of wealthy countries. And so these are real issues that we have at hand. I remember when I was pregnant with my daughter, one of the first things that came to my mind was Serena Williams' story. She is one of the richest, wealthy athletes that I've been following my whole life. And she had issues delivering a baby because she wasn't listened to about what kind of pain she was in. And that's an experience that happens to Black women more often and leads to maternal mortality. I've written long pieces on it for magazines about this. It's real fact and reporting. And so I think that Michelle Obama is just saying, let's make sure that women are educated in full. So when they're making these decisions, they feel protected and confident in the before baby decision, the having a baby decision, and everything that comes after it. And I think that is something that's been missing from the wider conversation.
I agree. I don't have any problem with that at all. I think it might be helpful, though, for more people, women and men, because fathers have a role to play here, too, obviously, hear that having kids can, and I'm not speaking from personal experience, I don't have kids, but that having kids can be a life-fulfilling and uplifting and wonderful choice that makes you happy and isn't about like sacrificing your identity or yourself. It's fun and great and happy, and you should feel confident to do it, and that having more affirming messages of parenthood for women and men might be a good thing in our time where, fewer and fewer people are choosing to make that choice right away. People are not having as many kids. I mean, just a couple generations ago, it was like 5 or 10 kids per couple.
Right.
Now it's like 1 or maximum. 2 or 0, which is going to have downstream effects. We're leaving it to Nick Cannon and Elon Musk to repopulate the Earth.
I think the bigger thing is that we need to support women's reproductive decisions and not just only regulate them. That's we're talking about regulating them far too often more than supporting them, and that's what Michelle Obama is asking for.
CBS Sunday Morning's recent interview with tech titan Elon Musk got a bit awkward.
Journalist David Pogue asked Musk if tariffs were affecting his business. Musk gave him a short answer. Then this happened.
Wondering what your thought is on the ban on foreign students, the proposal. I mean, you were one of those kids, right?
Yeah, I think we want to stick to, the subject of the day, which is like spaceships, as opposed to, presidential policy.
Oh, okay. I was told anything's good, but...
No.
Musk followed that up with he said that blaming, Doge for everything was going to be unfair. The idea that Doge was going to stop people from getting their Social Security check, according to Musk, was just not true.
Eventually, Musk did talk a little bit about the administration without Pogue asking about it. Take a look.
I agree with much of what the administration does, but we have differences of opinion. It's difficult for me to bring that up in an interview because then it creates a bone of contention. So then I'm a little stuck in a bind where I'm like, well, I don't want to, speak out against the administration, but I don't want to. I also don't want to take responsibility for everything the administration is doing.
Musk's last day at the White House was last week, since his time limit on being a special government employee has expired. Just from like a journalistic standpoint, I don't know. Your people have to set up an interview then along the lines that you want to discuss. Like
No. I actually 100,000% disagree with that. So when you go interview with a journalist, we're not just only talking about your spaceships. If there's pertinent news at the top of the day that people have been talking about endlessly, there's no way a real journalist is going to avoid that question, or they might say no to the interview if it's completely off the table and you won't do it, or you'll storm off if they ask the question.
Well, right. Well, you're supposed to say, I'm willing to talk to you about this. And the journalist say, when you're setting up the interview, well, this is what we want to talk about. You make some agreement over what you're going to talk about and what's going to be covered. And then, if you go back on that. Now, it sounds like the journalist was saying he didn't go back on that. He said, your people said you'd be willing to talk about whatever. And Elon Musk is saying, I just want to talk about spaceships. So that's a failure of setting up the interview.
I thought it was interesting. He said what, quote, was starting to happen was a bit unfair. He also said, quote, becoming the whipping boy for everything is what Doge was doing, right? When you brought that up when you were reading the script. I think that he has a point there. I think that some Republicans look at Musk as this needed disruptor who could do the dirty work, right? He could slash departments. He could fire bureaucrats. He could take all the political heat, and he doesn't have to worry about midterms or the next election season. He just can go back to the private sector. But I know now that his exit is leaving a huge void for Republicans, because who's the scapegoat now? And who's going to get this $36 trillion debt down? He was actually trying to, and now we're back to Congress arguing about a big, beautiful bill that may or may not pass. And I think that they had an easy couple months to blame everything on Doge and Elon Musk, and now it has to go back to the party at hand that is in charge of actually passing these laws and how they affect people.
I think it's interesting that it's clear Elon Musk does not agree with some of the administration's policies on immigration, on tariffs. I mean, it's not a secret. Even when he was still part of Doge, he spoke up against tariffs. He tweeted about why he didn't like them. He called the main advocate for tariffs within the administration, Peter Navarro, the R word.
Got into screaming matches, we know.
He does not want tariffs. He convinced Trump on the H-1B visa fight to be for bringing in more high-skilled immigrants, primarily from India, for that class of immigrants. He's the leader he's an important tech leader. The tech sector needs skilled immigrants to be able to come to the U.S. I don't think he wants, he doesn't want the kind of brain drain that would occur of just like sending everyone who's enrolled at Harvard back to China or wherever else. That's not good for his businesses. That's not good for tech, and ultimately would not be good for the U.S. economy. So, I am on the Elon Musk side of most of these disputes within Trump world. So, for my own thinking, I am actually not happy that he's going to have less influence over policy. To my mind, has the right ideas for how to make America globally, ensure America remains globally competitive and becomes the leader of the world for the next century. But there are other people in the MAGA contingent who want a lot less immigration, who don't care if tariffs, wreck the economy, because they want to restructure the economy to do manufacturing here, to protect labor jobs, have more jobs for the working class. That's their highest priority. The highest priority of the Musk tech faction is to accelerate GDP growth and AI growth and have these sectors really dominate Earth and get us to Mars. And that's my goal. And maybe Elon Musk can help work toward that goal from outside government. I think that's where he is actually most effective. The government is almost a distraction, trying to find like little small ball peanuts to cut from the budget, when what's really going to make lives better for Americans is the technological innovation his companies unleash. So
I mean, I'm open to peeling back the layers here. I think that in recent commentary, he says, I won't be donating as much to political campaigns. In recent months, we've seen Tesla lose a lot of money. We've seen him say he's stepping aside before his actual date to step aside, which was last week, came up, that he kind of stepped back earlier than that. And so I think there's some writing on the wall that there may be a bit of a rift or a disconnect. I think Doge was a headache for a lot of people in Congress because it caused a lot of distraction, big promises. But even when Marjorie Taylor Greene said she wanted to start the conversation about codifying some of the things that were brought up by Doge, we heard crickets.
Yeah,
even the Republicans don't even have anything else to say about it.
And they were the only ones. It was very telling.
And we've seen Elon Musk come in strong, saying, I want to cut $2 trillion from the debt. Then he brought it down to $1 trillion, and then he's leaving saying it's $150 billion, which people are still, critics still say that that number hasn't been fully fleshed out. And so I think, you know, there are good things about Doge and what the idea was. Americans did want more transparency. They voted for that in this election season. They want more spending accountability. But at the end of the day, it was erratic. It felt a bit unserious, like they were just doing things that they know that couldn't stick forever because they weren't going through the right channels. And a lot of people's livelihoods were affected by Elon Musk's decision. So there's a bit of, I think, animosity there when he's walking away, wondering what this is all for. Days after he leaves, there may be a bill passed that now increases our deficit by everything that he tried to get rid of.
It's pretty sad.
Yeah, he's going to, I don't think that this was a good working relationship for somebody who has successful working business relationships.
You know, he is far from the first person to become heavily involved in Republican political campaigning, giving money, hoping to get some policy direction he wants, and then realizing or deciding that it was not worth the effort and the money. This has been a frequent occurrence in Republican politics. Long time ago, back in 2010-ish area, the Koch brothers became very involved in, they'd been involved for years, but they became really excited about the trajectory of the Republican Party at the time, the Tea Party movement. It was all about limiting government, cutting government spending, reducing taxes, and then they got really involved. They spent a lot of money. Their names went from no one had ever heard of them to really punching bags in the media. They were exhaustively scrutinized. They spent tons of money to elect Republicans in 2010, 2012, et cetera. Their view, not that I've talked to them about it or something, although I've, for full disclosure, I've been in programs in the past that have certainly received money from the Kochs. I'm, ideologically very disposed to them, so take what I say with a grain of salt. But I think they decided, you know what, we gave tons and tons of money to Republicans. They didn't cut government at all. That's all we wanted was less government intervention in the economy, on foreign affairs. We didn't get any of that, so why bother? Peter Thiel gave tons of money to Trump in 2016. He sat out 2020 because, what was even the good of it? And
you can't buy your way through checks and balances. That's the problem. You can't buy your way through.
But the left and liberals and progressives they're always screaming about how bought and paid for the politicians are. Like, the people buying and paying for them don't feel that way. They feel like it's not worth it. They don't get anything they want. Maybe they get it on Democratic sides. On Republican sides, they don't get it.
Well, Elon got access to some really high-level meetings where they screamed at and berated people, like the South African
Maybe
president.
you can buy influence if you're trying to get specific industry perks or something, but if you're trying to get a general cut to what the government does, you can't buy influence, which is very, very sad for me.